This morning we are in our series, Growing with Jesus. How do you like our vines? Last week was just here and growing a little bit. We'll see what happens throughout the weeks. Really excited about really this whole year of pursuing the things of Jesus. And I kind of, that's where I start. I don't know where you start. People say, well, in my faith, I start with the Bible. I start with Jesus because he helps me understand even the Bible, right? And because he says, listen, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Him and I are one. We're exactly the same. And so I thought it's so important that I want to spend a year really just kind of concentrating on that. Well, this series, the last series was good. Did you like the last series? And this series already is proving to me to be just incredible. Like last week's message, I spent so much time on it, and I hope that it blessed you. I hope that you learned a lot from it, and I hope that you continue to think about the Spirit and the fruits of the Spirit. And so this message today is interesting because just had breakfast coffee with Carl. What was it? Lunch, breakfast, or breakfast coffee? All three. I just didn't know where I was going yet. But after our conversation, it kind of led me to some different things. It led me to a book that I picked up. It's on your notes, resources that I used for this message on the back. I highly, 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 highly recommend that first book. Highly recommend it. I don't care what you've read about habits before. It doesn't matter what you think about it. We're going to be talking about this today, about habits. And this message today, I think, is so powerful, and it's really sort of a concentration of a message or parts of a message that I preached on the Matrix series. I remember the Matrix series, and so this is like a highly concentrated part of that. A lot of new research has been developing over the last couple of years in neuroscience on the brain and how the brain works. And so today we're going to talk about how to grow. Well, within how to grow comes change. And change is a difficult thing. How many would agree with that?
Yeah.
Change is hard. Darren and I used to talk about this. Some people would say, well, that's just the way I am. I'm not going to change. They were like really? Like you're gonna? That's what you're going to go with? Like, this is just the way I am. But some people, I think they say it because maybe they've tried and go, I just can't. Well, research, neuroscience has shown why that is. Now listen, I don't know if I'll make it through this whole message today because there's so much information. I may pick it up if I have to pick it up next week. I don't want to rush through anything because I want you really to grasp this. Let me just give you a couple definitions of the word habit. It's an acquired mode of behavior that has, now this is an important part, listen to me, that has become nearly or completely involuntary. Now, we're going to talk about involuntary in a minute, and I generally mean involuntary. I generally mean you have no control over it. And that's kind of scary, isn't it? A habit becomes so ingrained, and we'll talk about the brain, that it's involuntary, that you just, a lot of times you didn't know it's even happening. Here's another definition. A recurrent, often unconscious, there's this involuntary thing, right? Unconscious pattern of behavior that is acquired through frequent repetition. It's more complicated than that, and we'll talk about it. So the book that I'm recommending is Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. You will not be disappointed that you get this book and you read this book. I promise you. It's not a Christian book, but you're going to learn so much. And what's fascinating is this. The things that we're going to talk about habit are good, are necessary, and God made you that way. The trouble is, like a lot of good things or necessary things or great things, it can be used negatively, right? And so that's what we're going to look at today. Because here's a truthful statement. When you change your habits, you can change your life, which will in turn change your destiny. So a key verse that we're going to kind of use is just a kind of general springboard in this is Galatians 6, and in verse 7 it says this: a man reaps what he sows. Reaps what he sows. And this has a lot to do with our habits. And so what I hope to do is I hope to talk a lot about habits and the neuroscience around habits, but I also want to show you that even though neuroscience is uncovering these truths, they're not new, right? They were always there, right? And the Bible talks about those things. And that's what I hope to show as well. And so Paul says a man reaps what he sows. Now, why is he talking about this first off? If you remember, his letter to the Galatians was all about one word: grace. All about grace. Is that you don't have to do anything, and you can't do anything to obtain God's love. Can't do anything. He loves you. While you were his quote-unquote enemy, he was never your enemy, you made him his. In the sense that you didn't know him or you didn't care, right? He loved you. He forgave you. And his love is unconditional. You can't do anything to make him love you more or less. In fact, you're saved, he talks about 100% by grace. It's all by grace. And so the natural inclination to that message. So a lot of people, there's some people that I know, the pastors, and they call what this message of grace, the way I interpret, the way I preach it, sloppy grace. I'm glad it's sloppy, right? I'm glad it's not rigid and fixed and set in parameters where that's grace if I will adhere to certain boundaries. That's not grace. That's not unconditional grace. So in a sense, I consider their criticism of my message of grace, sloppy grace, as a compliment. Because it's the gospel message of grace. And so the natural, and I get their criticism. Their natural, a human being's natural inclination would be, well, if that's true, see, this is from an what word can I use? An unregenerated person, to hear that message on this side of depth of relationship, of a union with God, right? On this side of it, oh, that's true, I can live however I want. But on this side of it, it's after experiencing grace going, wow, right? I can't believe it. I can't believe the unconditional love and forgiveness. Of course, I want to live in a way that honors the grace that I've received. Does that make sense? Yeah. Not to say you don't make mistakes and you don't fail sometimes, and that's where our message comes into play today. So Paul, and because of that, Paul knows that, and so Paul answers that question of, well, if that's true, then can I live however I want? Right? Paul answers that at the end. Listen, no, you understand? You'll reap what you sow. See how he answers it? Yeah. Right? Yeah, it's grace and it's all free and everything is love. But then I can live however I want. No. Just hold on. If you do that, you will reap what you sow. And he goes on to talk about that, right? You sow to the flesh, he calls it, right? And that's a whole other message to talk about that, to understand what he means by that. But he says, if you sow to that, in other words, it's your own ways. It's that person saying, I can live however I want. No, you will reap destruction. But if you sow to the Spirit, you'll reap what? Life. Abundant life is what you and I desire, what we want. And in the scripture it says eternal life. And so often we isolate that to mean something that it's part of it, but it's not the whole of it. Eternal life is a way of living, an abundant way of living, the way that we were created to live. The point here is that your small daily habits, they add up. Your small daily habits, they add up. And they will either lead to use Paul's words, death, destruction, right? Death or life. Your habits will lead you to death or life. Let me read a quote to you out of this book. It's important for us to really fully grasp this whole concept of habits. Habits are powerful, but delicate. They're powerful but delicate. They can emerge outside of our consciousness or can be deliberately designed. That's something for you to write down there. A habit can be deliberately designed. They often occur without our permission, but can be reshaped by tinkering with or fiddling with the parts. They shape our lives far more than we realize. They are so strong, in fact, that they cause our brains to cling to them at the exclusion of all else, including common sense. So here's a key question for us today. How do you and I purposely develop life-giving habits? Life-giving habits. So we're gonna talk about this purposefulness in your life. Now, a little disclaimer here to start out. Transforming a habit is not easy, and it's not quick. Let me say that again. Transforming a habit is not necessarily easy or quick. It's not always simple. And listen, I don't need to prove that to you. You know that to be true in your own life, don't you? We all know it to be true. But here's the good news. The good news is this. It is possible. It is possible. And now, because of studies in neuroscience, we now understand how. Scientists say this. Habits emerge because the brain is constantly looking for a way to save effort, energy. Now, keep in mind, who designed you? God designed you. Who made your brain? God made your brain to work that way. He's not surprised by it. He's not taken aback by it. He designed you this way. The trouble is that it can be deceiving to us and lead us down a wrong path sometimes. So left to its own devices, did you hear me? Left to its own devices. Now, it's not to say that the brain works independently of you. What I mean by that is, left to its own devices. If you are not intentional about your life, if you're not intentional about how you're living and what you're doing, this is what this means here, is that the brain will, left to its own device, will try to make almost anything that you do into a routine. Almost anything you do into routine. To try to save you mental energy. I spent some time trying to teach both my boys to drive a stick. How do you drive a stick? You drive a stick. When you're in second gear and you're driving, do you go, okay, there's the tachometer, it's there, I'm going this speed, okay, it's time for me to change into second gear, okay, third gear, I'm in second gear here, third gear is up, over, and up, I push the clutch for, is that what you do? No, that's what my boys have to do, right? They gotta try to think through all that stuff. Are you with me? They have to think through all that. While they're thinking through all that, what aren't they doing? Huh? What aren't they doing? They're not paying attention to anything that's going around. I mean, what's up? There's a car coming over this way. They're not making the drive. Right? Why? Are you following this? So the brain, your brain, my brain, is constantly looking for patterns and routines so that it goes back into the subconscious, right? And your body can just do it. So you can be like Sherry, you can drive her in a sports car and she's shifting gears and she's playing with the radio and she's putting on makeup and she's making up. That's not Sherry. I know it's not Sherry. Right? And you don't do you think of any of that, Sherry? No. You can drive the stills, you can drive the stick. You don't think of that. Were you ever driving and unconsciously kind of reached down and not even realize what gear you were in? How did I get, I don't know, third gear, I thought I was in second, right? Because it's just, you're just doing it. Sometimes I just reach down and I'm looking for that stick, where's that thing at? You know what I mean? Okay, so you get the idea. So we have developed a habit. A habit. So the brain left to its own devices, and so that's thinking to its own devices, right? We'll try to make almost anything into a routine. We're trying to make any routine, let me say it right. Your brain will try to make any routine into a habit. Any routine. Any routine into a habit. Why? I just explained it to you. Because habits allow your brain to power down from that so you can pay attention to the cars around you, right? And deer darting out in front of you. Got it? Got it so far? Okay, so this is kind of a little bit how our brain works. So why do we fail at change so often? Here's why we fail at change so often. We simply don't understand how God made us, how God wired us, and how our brain works. Here's something that's important for you to know. Habits are not your destiny. Habits are not your destiny. Habits can be ignored. Habits can be changed. Or habits can be replaced. When a habit emerges, the brain stops fully participating in decision making. This is where it gets in an area of neuroscience that's it's so new. It's amazing. Have you ever saw the movie 50 First Dates? Have you ever seen that? Okay. So there's a real life person that this kind of happened to. And every day is new. And it's in this book. His name's Eugene. You got to read it. It'll blow you away. What they discovered is that he could still develop habits. He couldn't draw a diagram of his house. Can you tell us what your house looks like, where the kitchen is? No, I couldn't. He said, when you're hungry, what do? He got up, walked to the kitchen, opened up the cupboard, pulled out peanuts, came back, started eating peanuts. The question is, how did he know where the kitchen was? He couldn't even diagram it. He couldn't tell you. How did you get to the kitchen from here? I have no idea. No idea. No clue. His wife took him around the block every day for a walk, 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 every day for a walk. Same way, around the block, every day for a walk, every day for a walk. One day she's in the shower, she's always worried about him, leaving and getting lost because he doesn't know anything. And she came down one time, she looked around the house, he was gone, and she panicked, she ran out, and she was next door everywhere, and couldn't find him anywhere. And finally she came back in the house, and he was sitting in the house watching TV. And there were some pine cones that were there in the house, and his hands were sticky, she found out. And she's like, where were you? He said, I don't know. Did you leave? No, I didn't. He couldn't remember anything. But he went outside and walked around the block, picked up pine cones, came back to the house, like he always did with her, his memory was gone. He had no memory whatsoever, but he could develop a habit. It's in a different part of our brain. It's in where the brain stem is. And so this is the new science that's coming out now. So when habits emerge, the brain stops fully participating in decision making. It's why he can still do a routine. Even though his brain is shut down, he can't remember a thing, he can still develop a routine. It stops working hard on how do I shift my gears and diverts its focus to other tasks. Listen, if your brain didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to function. So see, forming habits is good. We need to be able to do that. Otherwise, every time I get in the car, or if I would just forget that, I would go on vacation and we would take Michelle's car for 2 weeks, and I have to come back in, I have to relearn how to do that. No, let me tell you something. It's stored there permanently. That's good, isn't it? That's bad, isn't it? Yeah, it's bad. It's stored there permanently. It doesn't go away. That's scary. So in what I do, I run into it all the time. People are with addiction and stuff like that. We're going to talk about why this happens. They're good for a long time, all of a sudden, boom, right back. You know why? They don't understand this. They don't understand what we're going to talk about today. And they say, oh yeah, I'm clean, I'm good. Nah, it's stored there. It's there. It's there. It's not going away. Now I say that, I think there's a little caveat. Do I think God can erase it? I think He can. Does He always? Apparently not. Why? Don't know. Okay? Okay. Now that's what you're going to ask, what you're going to say. God can. I know He can. God does. I know He does. Does He always? No. Okay. You got that cleared up. Right? Pray for it, ask for it. I do too. Doesn't happen. Live here while you're waiting for that. Okay? Fair enough? Yeah. Wait for that, expect that, desire that, want that. Live here while you're waiting for that to happen. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So, unless you deliberately fight a habit, unless you find new routines, let me tell you what's going to happen. The pattern will unfold automatically. It's automatic. But that's a good thing, isn't it? Right? No, it's a good thing. Otherwise, you couldn't function. Right? You don't have to think. We wake up. The dogs are barking. I go feed the dog. This is my life. I go feed the dog. Take them out. Come in. I get a shower. I'm thinking about other things while I'm putting toothpaste on my brush. I'm brushing my teeth. I just do it. How long did I brush my teeth when I had no idea? Right? I know I did it. Which maybe you know this out of head because you do it, but you don't think, should I put my right shoe on first or my left shoe on first? You don't think that. You just do it. You just put your shoes on. Whether it's sock, shoe, or sock, shoe. It doesn't matter, right? It's your routine. That's what you do. You don't think about it. If you had to think about it, you'd be like, which one should I do first? Should I do this one first or that? Right? No. What you can do is you can be thinking about other things while you're doing that, while you're putting your shoes. So it's a good thing. So these patterns will, unless you do something about it, these patterns will automatically unfold. This concept, let me tell you something, honestly. This concept that you're going to learn about today may be the most important concept of your life. Today's message may be the most important concept that you learn. How habits work, how they work and how they change. How they work and how they change. So there's a story of one of the most influential people of the 20th century. And most people have never even seen a picture of him. Put his picture up there right now. You have either been impacted by his life or you know someone who has been impacted by his life. Yet you've probably never seen his face up until now. Most of you probably don't even recognize who it is. His name is, he's known by Bill W. This is Bill Wilson. Bill was raised in a family of teetotalers. Whole family. No one drank. In fact, Bill never touched the stuff himself until he went into the Army. He was very, very, very sharp. Always was. He was motivated beyond belief, and he was on a fast track to become an officer. At an officer's party, for the first time, he was handed a cocktail. It was gin, vermouth, and orange juice. He took one sip, and he turned to the person next to him. He said, I've just discovered the elixir of life. Over the next 2 decades, his drinking became just a major part of his life. By the mid-1930s, his life was spiraling out of control. He lost his job. He was in the process losing his family. One winter day, an old army buddy stopped by to see him, as they had done many times, and he walked in and he poured him a drink like they always did. But his friend this time refused to have the drink. He said, I've been sober for 2 months. Now, Bill was always wanting to rid himself of this demon, and because it kind of so taken over his life, so he asked him how he did it. And his friend started talking about the Bible of all things. And Bill didn't want to have anything to do with that. He began to talk about how the Bible talks about this way of living. I remember for best possible results. Right? And talk about for best possible results, the Bible says that he didn't want to have anything to do with that. He rejected his friend's advice and continued his downward spiral. Checked himself into a prestigious New York clinic. That didn't work. He was a avowed atheist, and he got to a place where he could hardly function. He was hallucinating, he had tremors, he was in constant pain. His words, not mine, he finally hit rock bottom. Why is it that we have to hit rock bottom? You know why? Habits. Habits. And so, right at that moment, he is this diehard, lifelong atheist. In that moment, he cried out to God for help. Now, he talks about he experienced this unbelievable ecstasy at that moment. And listen to me, I want to tell you something. At that moment, he said, he stopped drinking at that moment. Never had another drink since. Now, he knows exactly what I told you a minute ago. God can do that, God does do that, but not always. He knows that. So he began a lifelong pursuit of helping people, because he realized that wouldn't happen for everybody that way. So he dedicated his life to it. You know it to be the 12-step program, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. What's interesting is I was reading a little bit about this, and like 12 steps, it's like everybody's like, all about the 12 steps. It's nothing scientific. He said, how many steps? I can make 10 steps, 14 steps. I'll do 12. He said, I like 12 because 12 seems to be a prominent number in the Bible. That's what he said. Not scientific. So I picked number 12 and got 12 steps. That's it. But it flows. I'm going to kind of be touching on this. So it flows into our key concept for today. Here's your key concept. It's not easy, and it may be impossible, to erase a bad habit. I just threw impossible in there, because it's near impossible. Maybe it is impossible to erase it. Scientists say that it's always there. I say near impossible because I believe God can erase it. I believe that. But I say near impossible because it doesn't always. Now, we know this. We know that habits. You ever hear somebody use the word literally a lot? Literally? And they say literally, and you look at them and you go, that can't be literal. They use literal when it's impossible to be literal. Okay? But I want to tell you, I mean this literally. Neuroscience shows that habits literally alter your brain, change your brain. Literally. Change your brain. It's not a metaphor. Neurological pathways are created and established, and the more the pathways are run, the more established it becomes, the more hardwired it is. This happens deep in your brain. Write these two words down. Basal, B-A-S-A-L, ganglia, G-A-N-G-L-I-A. Basal ganglia, that's the part of your brain that houses your habits that are separate from the other function of your brain and memory and everything. Habits are at a different place, and it's close to your brain stem. So key concept, it's not easy to erase bad habits, but here's the good news. It's relatively easy to start a new habit that crowds out the old. Crowds out the old. So if we understand how habits work, if we understand how they work, in other words, if we understand the structure of the habit loop, if you understand, it makes it easier to control it. Okay? So now we're going to get into the habit loop. We're going to talk about this. And once you start tinkering with the components of the loop, in other words, I'll put it this way, once you start messing with the gears, you can change the habit. Okay? Let's talk about Bill Wilson again for a minute. That's why Bill started out by telling people the first thing they had to do, if you've been to the program, you know somebody has, you have to commit to 90 meetings in 90 days. Right? What's he doing? Establishing a what? Routine habit. Bill Wilson didn't know all this stuff about neuroscience. Commit to 90 meetings in 90 days. He didn't just say that, listen to me, look at me, everybody look here, everybody look here. He didn't just say, hey, you need to stop that. You better stop your drinking, you better stop your drinking, you better stop, right? That's not what he said. Because he knows that's not going to happen. Do you want to change that? Okay, commit to 90 meetings in 90 days. That's what I want you to do. We're going to talk about something else super, super important later on. It has to do with this too. But 90 meetings in 90 days. He said, let's begin a new substitute habit. Right? New substitute habit. It's going to crowd out the old one. It's going to crowd it out. Now, I told you this before, I'm going to say it again. This is really important information. Habits really never disappear. This is so important, guys, to know. Because once we start learning the structure, you'll see why. They never really disappear. They're encoded into the structure of your brain. They're encoded there. And I said that's a huge advantage for us. It would be awesome for me to have to learn how to drive that stick over and over and over again, right? So it's a huge advantage. The problem is this. Hey, look, listen. The problem is this. Your brain, the way it's functioning, it doesn't know the difference between bad and good habit. Basal ganglia. It doesn't know, it's just a habit to that part of your brain. That as they call it, the reptilian brain stem. It doesn't know the difference, good or bad habit. It's just waiting for, listen to me, it's waiting for the right cue and reward, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So how do you start that new substitute habit? Because the ways to do it are it's crucial. I believe it's biblical once you understand what's going on. And what you're going to find is, once you hear this, and once you get this, once you start to understand it, you're going to start to see it over and over and over again in the Bible. And it's going to change your life. Okay, so now let's talk about the habit. What time is it? What time do I have till? 10:30. I'm done?
You're done. All right.
I started a bad habit a long time ago. Man. Okay, that was like the introduction. Give me 5 minutes, okay? Tell me how habits work. We're talking about the habit loop. You gotta get this. Their first is the cue. The cue. It's a visual trigger, like a candy bar or something. Maybe it's a television commercial. Daryl, you and I have talked about this so much, right? Daryl told me about his past. He goes, you know, he had to remove himself from all the old cues in order to change his life. Didn't you, Daryl? All the old cues. He said, Daryl would tell me places that I would go, people that I would be with. My phone, all the numbers in there, gone. I'd get rid of them. Cues. He didn't call them. That's exactly what they were. Cues. Listen, a cue can be an emotion. It's hard to get rid of an emotion, isn't it? A cue could be a sequence of thoughts. You think this, you progress to this, you progress to this, you progress to this, boom. It's the cue. It could be the company of particular people. These are cues. Are you with me? The cue could be a smell. It's a cue. After the cue, right? The cue. So a cue for you and I in the morning is either your alarm clock going off, is either light coming through the window, right? Those are cues. That cue, light coming through the window, this guy, Eugene, you'll read in there. So he has these habits. So a cue for him in the morning is he does a routine. Light goes through the window, he does a certain thing, goes and brushes his teeth. But you know what happens to him? He does that 5 or 6 times a day. Why? Because of the cue. The cue's there, he just does it. And you do the same thing. Cues there, you just do. You don't even realize it. You didn't realize the habit. So the response can be incredibly complex or fantastically simple. Okay? So the ones that are complicated are habits that are associated with emotion. So he's sitting in his living room. His daughter comes in every day. His daughter comes in, chats with him for a while, goes into the kitchen, talks to mom for a while, leaves, waves bye to him, and goes out the door. Okay? All the way around. He starts to, when she leaves, he starts to get mad. Why didn't she come and talk to me when she's leaving? Well, she already talked to him. He didn't remember that. Why didn't she come talk to me? He gets mad now. What happens is, this idea when things go awry, you start to get agitated. And so she realized that she would just pop in, chat with him a little bit, and walk out. He wouldn't be mad anymore. He didn't know why he was mad. And his wife, for a while, she'd get mad, all upset. She'd go, why are you mad? He goes, I don't know. And then it would run its course, and he'd be fine. He'd be happy again, and go back to that, right? But it had to run that course. Until she popped in, chatted with him, all that, and he was okay. He didn't remember any of it. So it can be extremely complicated, complex. Response can also be measured in milliseconds. And then the third thing is this: you have cue, you have response or habit. The last thing is reward. Reward. Reward can range from food, drugs. These things cause a physical sensation. Reward can be an emotional payoff, such as the feeling of pride. Right? Come on, you list people. Check. That's your reward. That's your reward. You did it all for that. Reward can be just about anything. They did this research, you'll read in the book, of this monkey named Julio, where they taught him he saw a certain shape, would pull a lever and he'd get juice. Apparently monkeys love fruit juice. Would do anything for this fruit juice. So the cue was this colored shape. The response was to pull a lever, and the reward was to get the juice. Here's what's amazing. The first time he did this, his brain's working, right? They have all these transmitters in his brain, and his brain spikes, right, with these colors. He's trying to understand what these things are, and then he gets this lever, pulls the lever, it's spiking, his brain's spiking. And then what happens is after a time, he learns that his brain spikes at the beginning, and then is quiet, and then when he gets to the word, it spikes again, right? Why is that? Well, it's important, right? It's important for your brain to power down. This is the habit. Powers down on the habit. So you can do other things. Your brain, listen to me, your brain shuts off. You're like, what? Yeah, it shuts off. Shuts off in that. So you do the habit without realizing it. And then what happens is the cue and the reward become one and the same. Pavlov's dog, right? They start salivating before they haven't got the reward yet. They're tied together. And then when it doesn't happen, then you get agitated, right? Okay, so it's kind of like it's kind of like this. It's kind of like we went to the fights the other night, right? And it was Matt won, by the way. His fight, it was his first 10 rounder. It was really exciting. Actually, it wasn't very exciting. It was exciting being there. The match just, no one knocked anybody out because it's been waiting for, you know what I mean? Exciting that he won. We were happy for him, right? But we were in the casino. Michelle's looking around all these people going, wow, these people, it's unbelievable the money they're spending and stuff like that here, you know? And here's the thing. They walk in and they hear all that, all that noise, all that stuff right there, and they start to get excited just as if they had won. They haven't even played yet. The excitement's there, and it gets them right. The cue, the sounds, the colors, and everything goes to the routine, the habit of the gambling for the payoff, the reward. When the reward doesn't come, then what happens? I love that commercial. I don't have a gambling problem. I have a money problem, right? And so, and then you get agitated. My dogs now, it's so funny. I don't generally train my dog with treats, but you have a treat for your dog, right? So you say, okay, you want this treat? Sit, right? Sit and give me your paw, right? And then give you the treat. So now, as soon as I pull out the treat, they're sitting like this. I haven't asked for anything yet. You know what I mean? They're salivating as if they're eating the cookie already, the biscuit already. And then, our dogs are already like 70, 75 pounds already in 6 months. And so, Michelle, you need to get bigger biscuits because they're this big. The dog, it's like a pill. They swallow it. They go chew and bomb. But what is it? Habit. Habit. Now, they're already doing it. It's just unconscious, right? Biscuits, sit, paw. They just do it. They're not thinking about it. They're not. That's just what they do. Try to, no, I want you to lay this time. They're like, what? Like, confused. What are you talking about? No, I did the thing. Give me the biscuit. That's the way our habits are. But here's the thing. You're the same way as my dogs. I'm the same way as the dogs. Question is this. What's your biscuit? What's your biscuit? Well, let me tell you. I'm going to close with this. Researchers have found that there are basically 3 biscuits, 3 rewards for human beings. First one, write it down, is pleasure. Pleasure. I feel better now. I feel better now. Listen, it may be fleeting, right? It may come and go rather quickly, but nonetheless, it's the reward. I feel better now. So there's 3. One's pleasure. Second one's social. I'm liked, accepted. Every one of us wants to be liked. Every one of us wants to be accepted. Somewhere, somehow. The last one is achievement. Achievement. Am I making progress? Right? Am I making progress? That's why one of the things, so I've heard different things, right? I've heard both, so you can tell me, you probably heard it too, about when you're trying to lose weight. Some say don't get on the scale. I tell you, research will tell you, get on the scale. Get on it often. Why? Achievement. I lost half a pound. Wow. That's only been 6 months. That's fantastic. Right? Hopefully it's better than that. That's my experience. But right, you get on a scale. Can you agree with that? I lost 2 pounds. What does that do? Motivates you, doesn't it? Motivates you what? We're motivated by that. These rewards, a feeling of making progress. So Bill Wilson recognized that, realized something. He realized this. He said, he thought at first people drank for pleasure. People drank for pleasure. As it turns out, it was more than that. There was a social aspect to it. Let's put it in my terms. Partiers like to party. Partiers like to party. So in a genius move, what he did was he said, what am I going to do? I'm going to substitute. And we're going to, you're going to come to be part of a, what? A group. Social. So you're going to get, so the thing that you do this because you like this. So we're going to give you this. We're going to start a habit. A new habit. He didn't just say stop partying, he gave them a different group to be a part of. And then there's also this sense of achievement in the 12 steps. What do they call it? You work the steps. There you go. Step 4. Step 4 done. Achievement. Working through. Keep track of your progress. Keep track of your sober days. So, and then at the end of the 90 days, they give I read this, I didn't know this, they give a pin. You get a pin. A sense of achievement, a sense of progress. So there's this built-in sense of, there's a social component, and there's this achievement component. But what about the pleasure reward? You aren't getting that buzz or that high anymore. I'm going to close with this. This is it. Brilliantly and biblically, I might add, Bill said there is a pleasure. And the reward of sorts in sobriety, he called serenity. What's the Bible call it? Peace. You see it over and over again. You see it over and over again, the reward. Scripture after scripture. Peace. 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 Listen, every one of us desires serenity. Have you ever taken a cruise? Ever take a cruise? Go on a cruise. Really? Nobody? Okay, a couple people. And the back of the boat, it's the boat that we go on, the back of the boat, it's for adults only. And here's why. It's called Serenity. You can't have kids there called Serenity. Right? But what's the idea in your mind? You go there for what? Kids are doing, you don't care what. We have 2 rules. Don't leave the boat. That's the rule, right? Leave the boat and be there for dinner. Other than that, there's no rules. Go do whatever. And just don't tell us about it. And don't come to Serenity. Come there. I don't want you to come there. The Bible calls it peace. Peace. It's the sense of wholeness. When you begin to understand the habits loop, you're going to see it all through Scripture. Okay? Let's stand. Oh yeah, I have one announcement for you. So in July and August, this isn't going to affect you guys. You guys are already here. In July and August, we're going to go to one service. Okay? It's going to be this service. You're all happy. Come on. I didn't come that early. Okay? Just July and August. Okay? One service. Okay? We'll all be together, one big family. We'll all be in here. You get to meet some people that you like to sleep in. So how about if we just pick up this next week? Sound good? Yeah. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for today. Although this seemed to be very, this message seemed, on the surface seems to be, more quote unquote secular, God, than spiritual, but it's spirit all over it, because you created us to be a certain way, and we're just now discovering the ways in which we were made, and so now we can it's something that in your word is just scattered throughout your word everywhere. We just couldn't see it before, but now God, help us to see it. In all these places in the Bible. And help us to learn from your word and learn from current research, God, that we can that we can alter our lives for the good, that we can make choices that lead to life and not death, that we can make spirit-led choices, that we can alter our habits, those things that just happen right now, just unconsciously, God. Help us by the power of your Spirit. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, friends. Look forward to next week.